top 5 storylines of the weekend going in. I did this thinking oh, it's Thursday, you guys are going to be gone, but you'll actually be here tomorrow because
I'm thinking about taking tomorrow off anyway. I'm exhausted.
It's the bye week, so Midway played 10 games straight through, and now they have a bye.
High school football team we cover.
So you guys will actually be here tomorrow.
District champs.
Yeah.
District champions we cover, broadcast their games.
Yeah. So
ever since you left, they win a district title.
Well, I mean, I'm happy I could help. I clearly wasn't helping before. Number 5, which coaches wake up to hot seats? I did not pick these 2 graphics, but there were 2 I was going to bring up. It is very interesting on Dave Aranda. I did a podcast today with a guy named Chase Thomas, a really good podcaster out of Knoxville. And he was asking me about Dave Aranda, and he asked the question, okay, what is the future hold if everything continues to go south? I said, it's a really interesting question. I think the thing that Mac Rhodes and Baylor are faced with Dave Aranda. You have a guy that you know, and I don't want to say believe, I think we all believe it, is one of the smartest football minds you can possibly have. You have this guy with this unbelievable skill who is so intelligent and is so can maybe even be groundbreaking if he hits it right, because he has a mind that works like very few people's in the world does. And if Dave Aranda was an engineer or a poet or whatever, people would be saying this guy's mind is different than all the other engineers and poets or whatever it was, because he's unique. Do you have to forge through the storm believing that this guy can eventually figure it out, or send him off and then worry that 5 to 7 years from now he'll figure it out and he's hoisting a national championship trophy somewhere else? Or do you have to look at the now and go, well, I don't know. I don't know if we can wait that long.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Mac Rhodes gets paid millions of dollars to make that decision. And if I got paid millions of dollars, I'd be happy to make it, but I don't. So I don't know what you do in that situation. I know one thing, that it is entirely possible, but I mean, what do we? You got to give yourself something. We're waiting 10 years. I mean, how long are we giving him? Is it? There's got to be a cutoff at some point, because sure, 5 years from now he could win 12 games again. But if the 5 years are 4 wins and 3 wins, and they made a bowl game, and then that's back to 5. Oh, it's 7, and we're going you know what I mean? So I don't know, and there isn't grass always greener on the other side. There is no magic. Hey, we'll go hire. Name a guy, G.J. Kinney, Jeff Traylor, the same old names. All due respect to those guys. Just had Jeff Traylor on this week. But, I mean, is that anything that's going to guarantee that that's going to get them back to where they want to be? No. So, yeah, it's quite the predicament. I think that Mac Rhodes absolutely does believe in Dave Aranda. I do as well to a certain extent, but, just the product that we've seen this year, guys, you just can't. I mean, we got to be realistic about it, right? And you can say, well, we're close and we're close and we're close. It's but the same thing happens every single week. And it's to the point now where we've talked this so to death from every angle that all that matters is the results. All the other stuff, the way he operates the program, everything is great. But, to get fans in the stadium and to have hope and positivity around your program that leads to recruiting, and you got to have some juice, and there's just no juice right now.
No, it's a malaise. I've used that term. Ask Ricky Thompson. That here's from a guy that's a lifelong Baylor fan. He's he's younger than I am. We bleed Baylor though through and through. But after these years of watching these teams, this is the most non-competitive team I can remember in recency bias. But they look even worse than some of the Guy Morris teams, who was trying to do it right because he had some, NFL type, background, and really did have some pretty decent stuff start to happen, and then Bryles took over. It's a malaise. It's like I mentioned, there are 2 teams playing this Saturday, Houston and Baylor. At least Houston has had some moments where you're like, damn, even though they're not very good. And if they come walking into Waco and they're not very good and they thump you, beat you straight up,
Yeah, it's kind of this.
Vegas does not have Aranda. I think there's a couple of lists that have him up there with Jimbo, but he's not on the 2 that I just looked at Vegas as far as the hot seat.
And Houston is kind of who's the skinniest kid at fat camp on day one kind of award.
Well, I mean, they played Texas close and they Hail Married West Virginia.
Yeah.
That's their highlights.
Yeah, and Baylor's highlight is UCF, and That's it.
That's
right.
pretty much it.
And beating Cincinnati, who's worse than both.
That's the thing is, I don't know, we got to go.
Go ahead.
We're 8 games in, and like there's been little to nothing exciting. Like the entire time. It's just you go there and you sit there and you're just bored to death, and it's not fun to watch, and there's nothing. Or cover. And you're just there because you have to be, not because you want to be. And I think that's a big part of the problem as well, is folks, like, give them a reason to care. And they will, and they've tried to show that at home, but then you go and you lose every home game except for the FCS school. So who's going to the NFL draft this year?
Not knowing that I know
like
of.
Nobody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a couple guys are like late-round picks, but, I mean, you should look wherever you want to look, and there's just not anything that you can really hold on to and be like, this is where it's headed. You can't, and then that's the big problem that they have right now.
Here's a question I have for Mac Rose, and this: if you wait another year, could that actually cost you 3?
That's
Number 2,
the decision. Yeah.
Have you given him everything he needs to succeed in today's college football? And if you do you trust that staff to use it correctly?
Yeah. And those are huge questions. And because look, and putting Jimbo on this graphic, Emory did a great job of it. Texas A&M can say they've given Jimbo everything. Like they can honestly say they have wide open road, all these things to do whatever you want, and that's why they're going to have to make that decision because they've given him everything to succeed, and they're not anywhere closer than they were when he got there on day one, other than maybe having better recruiting classes. But Kevin Sumlin was regularly in the top 10 to 12, and so Jimbo's moved him to the top 5 to 7 most every year. So, yeah, that's been better, but still this record's the same. So, Baylor has to look at that same thing and that are we doing everything we can? If we are, what are they doing? And
I don't know if they've done. I know that Mac has disagreed about whether they got a late launch on NIL. I think they got a late launch in announcing that they had NIL, et cetera, unlike some schools that have blasted it out over social media. But the question is, if you wait another year, do you lose 3?
Yeah.
And you don't have time to lose 3 because with Oklahoma and Texas walking out the door, this is when you could take advantage of it. And do you believe that they're going to do that?
Well, and the other, we got to go. But, I mean, the other part of it is, what are you expecting NIL to do exactly? Like bring in an all-star crew? You do realize everybody else has NIL, right? And a lot of them have more than you. So, like this whole idea, well, if NIL was better, we could – yeah, but you're still going to be competing with all the other teams to get those guys. So, I mean – yes, that could be better. You could have a couple better players, maybe a little bit better on average, but that doesn't cure what the overall issues are either. So, yeah.
Number 4, where does the Michigan conversation go? I'm curious to see how it goes through the weekend in that, look, I think that the Big Ten coaches are justified in wanting a swift resolution to this. However, I'm not sure that exists. So while I think that something should be done in this case to figure it out, this should be a flashpoint for people to go, okay, this is why we need to do these things faster, and here's how we will do it. Because if you have somebody essentially getting caught cheating in real time and not well after the fact, you should be able to punish them for violating the rules. But that's not the case when it comes to college football or college athletics in general. But this is a very interesting case where you do have some evidence that could, if you do it right, lead you in a very quick direction to at least that you broke a rule. Now, how much that rule affected the wins is up for debate currently. But if you know that Connor Stallions was at these games and he's not allowed to be there, then you know that they broke that rule. So adjudicate that and see what happens. But I think it's going to continue to morph as this thing goes on.
Yeah, I'm almost tired of talking about it. It's almost like
I just don't know. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea
yeah.
where it goes. I mean, it's an interesting story, but like as far as what happens next and all of that, yeah, I have no idea. I mean, it doesn't appear like they're not going to get kicked out. They're not going to get their season ended abruptly. So where does the conversation go as you ask the question there? Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm interested to know, and I am kind of like getting a little tired of it just from the standpoint of I just want something more of substance. You know what I mean? Of like, I do want to know where it's going. But as far as the like, well, what did he know and what did they know and all the speculation part of it, I'm kind of over that at this stage. But I get the interest level, and I will have some renewed interest when I hear. That was him on Central Michigan's sideline, and this was what was happening and all of that. But it does seem like there's a lot of layers to peel back, and there's a lot of plausible deniability and all those things. So yeah, who the heck knows?
Number 3. Who stares bowl elimination in the face?
Both of them do.
Both of them do. I was thinking more about TCU and Texas Tech. I was thinking more about Clemson this week. Clemson loses to Notre Dame. They'll have the 5th loss, which they're not emotionally ready to deal with it in South Carolina, clearly. But there are a lot of teams who you lose this week, and not just ones like Baylor and Houston who, I mean, realistically have been out of the bowl conversation for a couple weeks, not mathematically, but, projecting it out. But there are some teams that are pretty perennial bowl teams as well that are really kind of going to be white-knuckling down last few weeks if they lose this week.
Yeah, the only one I could think of off the top of my head of interest, like just nationally or whatever, would be Colorado. They've got Oregon State coming up. They're 4 wins right now. And so what started off like, oh, yeah, they'll make a bowl game, is now suddenly with their Pac-12 schedule grounded back to earth a little bit. And obviously Shador's getting real beat up. You wonder how many wins are still out there for them. And Oregon State's not likely. Now, it's in Boulder. Who the heck knows? But you got Arizona. You got Utah remaining. You got Washington State in between Arizona and Utah. And Washington State's kind of struggling, but that's in Pullman. So they don't have a guaranteed schedule remaining on this roster. Now, them falling short wouldn't be if you took away the early wins, it wouldn't be a shock to say that before the season started if they don't make a bowl game. But given the way they started hot, that obviously changed the perception and the expectations a little bit, but now it's starting to revert back to kind of the beginning here. So yeah, they need to go 2-2 to make a bowl game. So they're right there on that edge.
Number 2, can LSU beat Saban 2 years in a row? Garrett will walk the streets of Robinson at night thinking about this for the next few days.
Will you really?
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
Will you do it if they win?
Ooh, I might. Yeah.
Will you just like you did in Phoenix when you and Paul just wandered down the street randomly?
We didn't wander. We got an Uber, and that guy waited outside for us.
You weren't allowed to drive at that time, but I'm glad you did that. All right.
He was super cool about it.
Yeah. All right. And he goes, yeah, you go to that house.
Yeah. It was the house.
Right.
It was a business regulated by the state of Arizona.
To me, this game might if Alabama wins this game, it's just another what Saban's done to take a team that looked so fragile. And yet again, Brian Kelly and LSU got them last year. Yep.
I mean, he's the greatest college football coach of all time, so it wouldn't be a shocker if he's able to get a win here. But LSU winning 2 in a row, that'd be a big deal for that program. That really would. That'd be massive for Brian Kelly. Hot year last year. Kind of started off a little bit different here, but it seems like there's a little gasoline being poured here and there. Now they win this weekend. Fire's blazing again. So, yeah, this is a huge game. But, I mean, Saban, man. So, easier said than done for sure.
And number 1, who survives the Big 12 this weekend? I mean, this is the best weekend I think that they have left on the schedule overall. Maybe not, but this is the toughest one, the craziest one it could get. And things could get all kind of slanted and crazy, and there's going to be a 3-way tie more than, like Craig said at the end of all this. But even still, I think this is the key weekend for the Big 12 as it moves forward.
Maybe 2, if not a 3-way, maybe a 2-way.
If Iowa State loses.
Iowa State loses to Kansas, then you'd have the winner of the other 2 games, K-State, Texas, and Bedlam. Those 2 would be tied for first place with 1 loss apiece. But, yeah, if Iowa State wins, it'd be a 3-way tie with whoever wins those 2 games and so on. But, yeah, it's a pretty salty weekend. I think it's top to bottom the best conference schedule in America and the most interesting schedule and the most important schedule in so many ways as far as the conference race goes. And I'm kind of trying to look ahead and see if there's anything that pops out. But, I mean, the results this weekend matter so greatly that, it remains to be seen on if there will be another one like this. But this one, just having your top 4 of the 5 or top 4 arguably all playing each other, you asked the question earlier, and I wasn't trying to be flippant, but we got to see who wins these games to kind of know what the trajectory is, because I don't think even if you lose this weekend, if you're Texas, if you're K-State, if you're Oklahoma, I guess the answer would maybe be Iowa State. If they lose, then they're in a bit of a more of a pickle, I would think, just based on their talent level. But, I mean, I think you could still lose this weekend and still be alive with 3 weeks to play because it depends on, kind of the rest of the landscape and the schedules remaining. But, yeah, this is a great question, and it's up for like 5 different teams right now, and all the rest of them could have a say in it as well by, pulling upsets or doing whatever. So, yeah, it's a fun league.
All right. I missed the text from